big thing is just consistency, right? I mean, if you do it every single day, and if you're diligent about follow-up, right, it's going to happen. I mean,
how do most agents who don't have access to the secrets that the top agents in our industry hoard to themselves grow and prosper in today's real estate environment? That's the question. And this video podcast is the answer. I'm Pat Hyben, and welcome to Real Estate Rockstars.
Rockstar Nation, this is Aaron Muchastegui, and I am back for another episode of the Real Estate Rockstars podcast. Today, I get to interview Lior Rozhansky. Lior is from Boston, Massachusetts. He's done a pre-interview with Curtis. We've been looking at all sorts of data. 26-year-old realtor out of Boston, Massachusetts. In his third year of business, he runs a small team of 4 agents. We're going to talk about that. Last year, he personally did $12 million in volume. His team did $21 million. And a unique thing is that he also has a $9 million rental portfolio. But again, 26 years old, Lior is really, really crushing it in real estate. And I'm really excited to hear how he got here at such a young age. Lior, thanks for coming.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me on here.
So you've been a longtime listener of the Real Estate Rockstars podcast. So what is it about our podcast that gets you coming back, listening more? What do you like about it?
Yeah, it's one of the podcasts I jumped into when I first got licensed. There's so much different type of content on the podcast, and it talks about all the different spokes of the business, right? From your prospecting to the follow-up, building a brand and everything in between. So, I kind of treat it almost like a mini MBA, right?
Yeah.
In real estate. And I use that to basically launch my business.
Yeah, we want our podcast to be like a cheap MBA, right? It's totally free. You get to come out. We actually have some real estate courses and things like that, but just from listening to the podcast, people can learn so much about what's out there. And one of my favorite things to do is get to interview people that started their career listening to the Real Estate Rockstars podcast. I get so many people that reach out to me on social media with questions or telling me, hey, that was a good episode, and they're new in real estate. And I always reply back to them and say, hey, I can't wait to get you on the show. So today is Lior's day. And if you are a new listener out there, I hope you add it to your whiteboard, add it to your goal list that you are going to get a ton of volume and come back and get interviewed on the Real Estate Rockstars podcast. So Lior, Lior's a unique name, Lior Rozhansky. So where does your name come from?
It's actually Israeli. So I was born in Israel, and we moved to the States over here when I was 10 years old. 9 years old. All
right. So did you move to Boston?
Yep. We moved directly to Boston, straight from Israel. Yep.
All right. So Israel here. So that is why you have a unique name. And then how did you get into real estate? Why did real estate become the thing?
Yeah. So kind of going off of that, for me, it's kind of a classic immigrant story. We moved over here. Parents really, really wanted me to be a doctor, like a lot of immigrants. And so I ended up going to college, did pre-med, actually submitted my med school apps the year after I graduated when I was kind of working an in-between job in consulting. But then I kind of started very randomly reading into financial literacy, real estate, really never had any desire to do any of that, but it kind of grabbed my attention. And within a year of graduating, I bought my first multifamily, and then within a couple of days after closing, withdrew my med school apps. And kind of haven't looked back since. I ended up partnering with my buyer's agent who sold me that multifamily. Because I was all about investing, but then I kind of had a second thought, and I was like, well, my agent just made a pretty good amount of money, probably more than what I made in a month. So if I could do that as well, that's not too bad.
Yeah. So you started investing, and then you decided you wanted to become a real estate agent. How did you? So you had done your 4 years in college. You were applying to med school, and so then you just knew that you were looking for investment property. Did you kind of what made you think, hey, I'm going to go buy this multifamily?
No, it's funny. The year before I bought my property, I actually had a number of buddies who were all talking about going to buy a multifamily. And I thought they were just out of their absolute mind. And I told them that, but for me, it was really random. I just, in that in-between year, I just did, like everyone does, they do a little research on investing, what they can do. Stocks never really appealed to me. So I picked up a book on real estate, and it kind of just made sense to me. And I ended up kind of pulling the trigger pretty fast. For me, it was a mentality of, look, if I go broke, I'm 23 years old. What's the worst case? So I just kind of went for it.
Yeah, I hope that more 20-somethings hear that and listen to it, right? Lily, now is the time to swing for the fences, because if you miss, you'll have plenty more times to change. And and we've also had plenty of people say, hey, it's never too late to become a real estate agent. At 50, you can become a real estate agent because you'll get to use all of those different relationships you've built throughout your life. But if you're young, you can take bigger risks, take bigger swings at the fences. And yeah, worst case is you lose and you go start something else. How did you come up with the money to buy the first multifamily?
So for me, it was, I was pretty diligent about saving my, during that year I was working consulting. Mm-hmm. I had a pretty good salary, working very, very long hours, 70, 80 hours per week. But I was able to save pretty diligently. My parents let me live at home, so I didn't have to pay any rent. I ended up saving enough for a low down payment. So I took an FHA loan and went to go buy my first 3-family.
That is super, super cool, man. So then you saw the closing statement. You saw that your real estate agent, made more money than you made in a month, and you felt like you had, done some of that. So then you became a real estate agent. And then did you? What company do you work for now, and what company did you start working for?
Yeah, so my buyer's agent, he was a newer agent, but he was pretty rooted into the investor world as well. He was networking with a lot of investors and larger developers. He actually worked for a small brokerage, which was very multifamily heavy. So that's where I went, and that's where I ended up hanging my license. And even though we don't work at that company anymore, the owner of that company today is actually our business partner in our investment portfolio. So a great relationship from there. We worked there, and eventually we kind of got recruited to some larger firms based on our numbers. And today we're with Compass.
Yeah. So are you still partnered with the same agent you hired at the beginning?
Yep. So he's still my partner. We're basically 50-50 on the brokerage side as well as the investment side.
Rockstar Nation, this is Aaron Amuchastegui. Hey, I hate to interrupt the current podcast that you're listening to, but I am so excited to share this with you. I just finished interviewing the original host of this podcast, my good friend, Pat Hyben. I got to talk to Pat about how he started his real estate career and a whole bunch of tips and tactics that he used to be successful. So if you haven't listened to it yet, go check out State of the Market number 49. On there, I get to talk to Pat about all those different things. And in there too, he talked a lot about his 6 Steps for 7 Figures book and training program that he built over the last couple of years. And I realized I haven't done a good enough job of reminding all of you lately about all of the resources that we've built for you out there. So if you want to check out Pat's course, we've got like a 3-minute summary video when you go to it. It includes so many easy to follow tips that you can follow on like a day-to-day basis. You get email reminders, all sorts of different things that come with that course. You find that, you go to rebusuniversity.com, REBUS, rebusuniversity.com. Look at courses. You can find the 6 Steps for 7 Figures book. And really, there's a whole bunch of other courses in there too. Our normal prices used to be $1,500 or $2,000 a course. These are real deal professional courses. But now during quarantine, a lot of them are priced down to like $90, $95. So we slashed the prices so we know right now is the time for everybody focusing on growth and education, especially while they're feeling like they don't have as much to do. And if you go in there and you figure like there's a lot of different courses you want, maybe you don't want to buy the a la carte. You go to futureofrealestatetraining.com and you can get access to all of our different courses for $97 a month. I think there's a discount on there if you go a year, or there's even like a lifetime option you can pay. You get access to every course we've ever put on Rebus University for as long as we have it. So go check out those options, Rebus University or futureofrealestatetraining.com. All right, back to your podcast. Sorry for the interruption.
Website says Taylor and Lior. So I'm guessing that's Taylor then.
It's Taylor.
Oh, cool, man. So he was your agent. You said, let's partner. You start building a team. And then how did you get to, so you get 12 million in volume yourself last year. What's your average price? How many transactions is that? Let's tell us about those deals.
Yeah. So, and I have those notes with me here. So it was about 32 homes-ish last year. Our average price point, average is a little bit of a bad word because in Boston, there's a huge range. We've done deals as low as 300, and our biggest one to date is a $5 million deal we have under contract. So average isn't a great one, but I'd say on, our median, maybe the median one would probably be somewhere around $500,000 to $600,000. That's kind of our bread and butter here.
All right. So you do a lot of deals between 5 and 600,000. You've done them as small as 2 or 300 and as high as 5 million. That's a big variation. So how many deals did you do your first year in real estate?
First year was definitely a little slower. I mean, our first year we did about 13.5 million, between the two of us. So, it was probably around 10 transactions each or something. That first year was definitely a little tougher when we were really trying to figure out how to, what our core competencies were, how we were going to grow the business, et cetera. But we still ended up putting pretty good numbers up, I think.
Yeah. So how did you do those deals the first year? Did you get them from friends and family? How did you get those? Were they mostly listings, mostly buyers, agents, leads?
Yeah. So we actually, so being an investor, I really leveraged that. And our two biggest spokes of business is prospecting, right, which is the expired and the FSBOs, as well as working with investors. And what I really thought when I bought my property, for me, it was actually kind of like a gold stamp that I could kind of tell everyone, like, look, I've got a property, I'm an investor. And, it's kind of a fake it till you make it kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I would tell people all about my experience. And what one of our main spokes of business ended up being the blog Bigger Pockets. So that's how we ended up connecting with a lot of retail investors, a lot of younger people like myself, right, that were trying to break into their first deal. And I would just give them my advice, right, give them my experiences based on what I knew. And I ended up building those relationships over Bigger Pockets by providing value. And eventually they became a really big source of business for us.
That's crazy. And that's a forum. So we have had, Brandon and David, who are the hosts of the Bigger Pockets podcast. We've had them on here a couple of times. I'm great friends with them. We're in GoBundance together. We've gone and played in Hawaii and in Texas and all sorts of places. And Bigger Pockets is actually releasing a new book of ours that we wrote in probably like 2 or 3 months. So I love what they do over there in their forums. And I've heard of that before. People get on there, they post questions. You can, so really, agents listen to this, right? So if you're looking on how to go find deals, Lior first said, hey, I'm going to go provide value, but you went onto the Bigger Pockets forum and you would go find people in your area in Boston that were looking at investments or just anywhere looking for investments. How did you develop relationships on there that turned into deals?
Yeah, it's a great question. No, I mean, I was pretty focused. So, you can set up keyword alerts and that way you'll be notified every time a new forum post goes up. But I basically set up posts for anything that was related to Boston, investing, multifamily. The other thing I did is I literally had a standing reminder on my calendar every single day, just go into the forum, see what's new. And again, you provide value, right? I was specific about the types of forums I went after. So if there was like a wholesaling one, I wouldn't really give my 2 cents there because that wasn't really my gist. But every time someone asked like, hey, I'm thinking of buying my first multifamily or thinking about buying my first condo investment. Where should I buy? How should I do it? What kind of financing? That's kind of when I would sprinkle in my value and just, give as much as I can, give as much detail. And what's crazy is people see that and eventually they just will start reaching out to you.
So they see you on there, they follow some of your questions, and then they reach out and they say, hey, Lior, I'm trying to buy a multifamily in Boston. Do you want to help me?
It's crazy, but that's how it happened. Yeah.
That's fantastic, man. That is great. A lot of people are we've talked a lot lately about social media and going out there, but nobody in the last 2 months has brought up, using Bigger Pockets forums or other forums out there. Did you use any other forum type sites out, to go answer questions for people?
No, I mean, Bigger Pockets is definitely the most well-known one, especially in kind of your more newbie investor community, right? I mean, that's where a lot of newer investors go to find their knowledge. So that was honestly the only forum I focused on.
Yeah. So they focus on investors. We focus on real estate agents and we try to help real estate agents become investors over here at Real Estate Rockstars. So let's back up to like the world we're living in right now. What is Boston like? So every city, every state is different. So I live in California part of the time, in Austin, Texas part of the time. Very different responses. Right now, Texas was kind of released from shelter in place quarantine a couple weeks ago, maybe even a month ago. People started going back out to restaurants. Just this week, they started making masks mandatory again in a lot of big cities. What is happening out in Boston when it comes to quarantine and COVID and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of quarantine, we just started phase 2 a couple of weeks ago, where we have restaurants that can see people outside. Actually, today is the first day we can go into the inside of restaurants.
Okay.
So we're definitely progressing, I'd say.
Yeah.
But honestly, it really feels like, I think a lot of people just had enough, and there's a lot of people outside, a lot of people walking around now. So, I think there's definitely that hunger to get back to normal around the area here. And, in terms of the actual real estate market, for us, it was maybe that first month in March. I think it was a little bit of a shell shock here. And there was a lot of people that kind of hit the pause button because they had no idea what just happened. But honestly, since probably even April, the market's just been on fire here. Like in a lot of places, the inventory is just so low right now, and the demand. Boston's obviously one of the biggest cities around. It's super economically diverse, so there's just a ton of demand here. So that demand is currently, overshadowing the supply, and which is causing an insane market right here.
Yeah. Did you go to school in Boston?
I did. Yeah. Actually, I went to Brandeis University. There's a small school right outside.
Yeah, I mean, Boston has all sorts of universities, right? They've got small ones, they've got large ones. It is quite a place when it comes to your school options that are there. So, how about we've had a few people on lately that really talked about all of the huge changes that are happening around the country right now with race as well. Right. So they've had a lot of rioting and marches in Sacramento, California, where I'm from. And then also in Austin, Texas, we've seen businesses making big changes, for that. And I think Compass was one of the companies that recommended, people going with more Black owned businesses and things like that. What have you seen in Michigan in regards to that? Because Boston is a big city. So have there been has there been a lot of peaceful protesting, things like that? Is that affecting anything in real estate out there? I
mean, in terms of the general outsense, it's certainly very present here. We had a few nights at the very beginning that, kind of took a little bit of a turn from peaceful, but for the most part, it's been, it's obviously been very loud. There's been a lot of demonstrations, for good reasons. Compass definitely did make that shift when they announced that. In terms of the actual real estate market, I think real estate is a little different because it's hard to it doesn't really fall into that. For us personally, we've worked with all types of vendors that are that are owned by all different types of people. One of my photographers, that we work with is a Black owned business. But it's definitely forefront of mind right now, right? Everyone's paying attention to it, trying to do what they can to contribute.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you guys are getting closer to business as usual when it comes to, kind of real estate and continuing to try to go. A lot of one of the guys that we interviewed just a couple of weeks ago said it's really important to acknowledge what's going on with quarantine, with COVID, with race, acknowledge it, be there, make sure that your voice is heard, but also that businesses need to do business. We need to work hard to start getting things back to normal. And so Boston has had kind of a huge real estate market, you said. And so do you think, so what's next for Boston real estate? Do you have any predictions about, do you think that your market is going to continue to sustain because the demand is so low? Have you heard about, shortages if people aren't going back to school in the fall? Is that going to affect economics? Any predictions for long-term housing market stuff out there?
Yeah, I'm a very big believer in Boston. My whole rental portfolio is based very close to the city. In terms of the short term, they've been plenty of announcements of schools saying that they're going to open doors back for September. That can obviously change, but there's been some major universities called that out. Northeastern, which is a massive school, Boston University has announced that. There's a few other schools that are still waiting, but I think overall the sentiment here is it's definitely on the upswing. And in terms of the overall outlook, like I said, I think for the long-term value, I think there's so much potential. Like you talked about, right? Boston's incredibly diverse. We have We have the hospitals, we have biotech, we have pharma, finance, schools, right? I mean, we're just so diverse that for me, I think any day that I'm not buying property here, I'm losing out on future money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rockstar Nation, this is Aaron Muchastegui. Hey, I hate to interrupt the current podcast that you're listening to, but I am so excited to share this with you. I just finished interviewing the original host of this podcast, my good friend, Pat Hyven. I got to talk to Pat about how he started his real estate career and a whole bunch of tips and tactics that he used to be successful. So if you haven't listened to it yet, go check out State of the Market number 49. On there, I get to talk to Pat about all those different things. And in there too, he talked a lot about his 6 Steps for 7 Figures book and training program that he built over the last couple of years. And I realized I haven't done a good enough job of reminding all of you lately about all of the resources that we've built for you out there. So if you want to check out Pat's course, we've got like a 3-minute summary video when you go to it. It includes so many easy to follow tips that you can follow on it like a day-to-day basis. You get email reminders, all sorts of different things that come with that course. You find that, you go to rebusuniversity.com, R-E-B-U-S, rebusuniversity.com. Look at courses. You can find the 6 Steps for 7 Figures book. And really, there's a whole bunch of other courses in there too. Our normal prices used to be $1,500 or $2,000 a course. These are real deal professional courses. But now during quarantine, a lot of them are priced down to like $90, $95. So we slashed the prices so we know right now is the time for everybody to be focusing on growth and education, especially while they're feeling like they don't have as much to do. And if you go in there and you figure like there's a lot of different courses you want, maybe you don't want to buy the a la carte. You can go to futureofrealestatetraining.com and you can get access to all of our different courses for $97 a month. I think there's a discount on there if you go a year, or there's even like a lifetime option you can pay to get access to every course we've ever put on Rebus University for as long as we have it. So go check out those options, Rebus University or futureofrealestatetraining.com. All right, back to your podcast. Sorry for the interruption.
So that's great news. So how many deals do you have in escrow right now?
Right now, let's see, we've cut probably about 5 deals in escrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Buyers or sellers, or are they deals you're buying as an investor?
No, these are just our brokerage escrows, and we're pretty 50-50. I mean, I'm definitely a little bit more personally heavy on the listing side. My business partner Taylor is definitely a little bit more heavy on the buyer side.
Yeah. So what would you tell new agents right now if you're going to give them advice about how to go kind of crush the market? I mean, you've built your business very quickly. The revenue volume that you're doing is really quickly, especially for being 26 years old, 3 years in the business. 12 million and 21 million over the last 12 months. What advice would you give somebody to go build their business as quick as they can?
Yeah, I think the 2 big things is figure out your spokes of business, right? I mean, it kind of took me a little bit of time to really define that. But once I was able to define like, hey, these are the things that I'm absolutely committed to doing, that's when you can get super focused and attack it, right? So when I started out, kind of like I said, for me, it was working with the retail investors, which was for me through Bigger Pockets. The other big scope for me was prospecting, right? So I was very prospecting heavy. I was doing probably anywhere from 2 to 4 hours of calls every single day, hitting expireds, FSBOs, circle prospecting. I mean, literally whatever I could get my hands on. The attitude I took is if I didn't have anything to do, I would just call, right? And it's definitely grinding work and it can be grueling, but when you don't really have a database, when you don't have a brand, I think that's probably one of the faster ways to develop some sort of book of business. And then once you get 1 or 2 of these, then eventually you'll be able to learn more, right? I mean, once we did a lot of retail investors, then we started working a lot with professional investors and developers. So that developed into another scope of business. Then we also started going towards the branding side and doing a lot of social media. But you don't need to figure all of that today, right? Today, just figure out 1 or 2 things that you can absolutely do every single day. And that should be, and that will be enough to get you going.
All right. So you kind of had your list of stuff that you were going to, of like people you were going to call, and you just had it ready. And so anytime during any of the days when all of a sudden you had an hour or 2, you'd just say, all right, I'm going to spend the next hour hitting this list. And you just kind of had your running list. How did you keep track of that list? Yeah,
I mean, I recently bought Redx probably within the last year. I didn't really know about it beforehand, which was probably a mistake. So I was doing all of this by hand. Okay. I would literally just track it on Excel. I mean, really not a fancy system. I would just, every morning I'd download the new expireds. I'd have some, phone lookup software, spend an hour in the morning looking up phone numbers, and then the rest of the day just calling through expireds, calling through the FSBOs, et cetera.
Yeah. There is lots of fancy software, but I also like the point of you don't necessarily need that. Right. You go into your MLS. All of you agents have access to MLS. You go in and download something. So they would you would download the expireds. A lot of people have talked about the expired leads, the ones that didn't sell, the ones that have canceled, things like that. You put that in a spreadsheet every day and you figure out how to call those people. And you would just say, hey, I'm Lior and you want another shot at this?
That's basically it. I mean, I really did not have a fancy system. The one thing I heard even when I was listening to the podcast, right, when I was going through this, is the big thing is just consistency, right? I mean, if you do it every single day and if you're diligent about follow-up, right, it's going to happen. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I had sellers, when I called them up for like the sixth time, like 6 months later, be like, oh, wow, you're still calling me. All right, let's meet. It's just that conversation happens so many times. Or they would tell me something like, oh, wow, you called me a third time, and I really like your energy. Like, let's get it going, right? It's just, if you just keep hitting it, I mean, you don't even need to be good at it, right? It's the persistence and the volume will get you there.
I love that point. So you would just continue. So it wasn't necessarily about how good the lead was or how quick you called them the first time. It was about the fact that you would call them 2 or 3 or 6 times. You would just keep calling them. So some people say, hey, you have to be first, download it and be first. And really for you, it was like, no, you just have to be consistent. You keep going because they're not going to choose anybody for 6 months anyway. And so even if you're the 10th guy to call the day the listing cancels, 6 months later, you're the only one still calling, you get the deal.
Yeah, I mean, I can only think of maybe one time where I called them the first day and I got an appointment that day and the listing that day. That happened once and it wasn't even a good listing.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think every other single lead is minimum multiple contacts, at least 5, usually probably on average 10 to 15. Average, it would probably take a few months before they're ready to open up. And you got to play that game. I mean, if you're going to go for the gold every day, that's a tough game to play, I think.
Yeah. So new agents, listen to that part right there, right? So you could be 2 months in and so frustrated because you've called 100 people a day for like 2 months and you haven't got that appointment, you haven't got that deal yet, but that's totally normal. Like that is what's more abnormal is actually if on those first calls you succeed. And so that follow-up is where you get it and really the reason you get the deal 5-6 months down the line is because you did the 5-6 months of work to get there. But then eventually everybody that you have in the hopper, 6 months from now, you've got thousands and thousands of people that you've been calling for 6 months. So your odds just start to go up. I've heard a lot about people having really slow growth and then just huge growth when it takes off, when some of those plans continue to go. So you do a lot of listings. Your partner does a lot of the buy sides. So how do you get new leads on the buy side?
Buy side to this day, I will say we still get a fair amount from Bigger Pockets. We are not quite as heavy into the forums as we were a few years ago. I don't have the bandwidth for that today, unfortunately. But one thing that Taylor's been, my business partner's been amazing at doing is he's incredible at generating client referrals. When he gets a buyer lead, he absolutely treats the clients just like gold, right? I mean, and I do as well. I mean, that is really kind of like our, it sounds basic, but that's our philosophy. We really bend over backwards. We'll kind of deal with a lot of stuff maybe other agents won't necessarily want to deal with. But we'll provide absolutely gold client service. And, he's actually been blowing it up on the referral side within the last year or two as well.
Yeah. So we do a questionnaire before we get on the show. It says, if you were on stage, what would the name of your panel be? And what item are you putting into our investor toolbox? And they're kind of the same thing. So it says, when it said, what would your panel be? It'd be how to blow up your business working with investors and developers from day one. And the item that you're giving us to put into our investor toolbox and I'm sure, we're midway through this podcast. You guys have probably heard the ad of me coming on and reminding you now, go to the toolbox, go download it. We get these free stuff for you guys and they truly are free, but your guide is the ultimate guide on working with investors and developers. So tell me about that. Tell me what they're going to find if they go download that.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, that's kind of the scope of the business that kind of developed as we started working with a lot of Bigger Pockets clients. Eventually what I realized is as I was building broker relationships with people, with agents around me, because I was still looking to purchase property as well, right? And one thing that really clicked into me probably right after year one was I was getting all these leads from mainly brokers, really, if I had to be honest. I mean, obviously, sometimes from my own calling or sometimes from our own direct mail or something like that. But we were getting so many leads for like really good investment deals that maybe didn't fit my criteria, or maybe I just didn't have the capabilities of pulling something like that off. And what we really started doing is building a really large network of professional investors and professional developers. And what I mean by professional investors, it's not kind of like your person that maybe will buy one house a year or two houses a year. I mean, this is what these guys do for a living, right? I mean, these guys will crush out 5, 10, 15 houses a month, or they'll go develop mega projects. So we really started focusing on that. Again, being in the investment world, we kind of spoke their language. We understood what they were looking for. We knew how to run their numbers. We knew how they would look at the numbers and how to run the numbers for them. So we really started prioritizing that. And I'd say that was probably a massive spike in our business, maybe 30%, because we were basically just cashing leads that would cross our desks otherwise that we wouldn't really do anything with.
Yeah. So you just said a few of those things, right? So you spoke the investor language, so it made a lot of sense. But is there anything else, any other tricks or things that you would do, or extra value you would provide to get? I mean, those guys are doing 10 or 15 deals a month. They have agents, right? They have people that they've worked with in the past. How do you convince them to switch to you? What's the extra stuff that you guys would be bringing?
Well, let me make this clear, right? So a lot of it could be different in other parts of the country. Here, a lot of professional investors don't necessarily work exclusively with an agent, right? So It's not like I actually went to their office and pitched them on being their agent, right? So the way I was actually able to win the business and the commission for each sale is it's by deal basis, right? So you really provide value by finding a good deal, right? Because the finance, everyone's got really good financing, as everyone can pull off and execute, but it's really just about finding the right deal with the right numbers. So when I said that I started connecting with brokers, what the kind of text I would receive a lot of times is like, hey, Lior, I know this seller that's looking to sell this multifamily. They don't want to put it on the MLS. But if you know someone that would be interested off market, why don't you bring them here, right? And I can look at the deal within 2 minutes, know if it's junk or maybe there's something there. And then I know exactly who likes that sort of deal, who likes that sort of area. Bring it to them, and I can represent them as the buyer.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a lot of it's about hustling. We've had a couple people on lately that have said, two guys in particular I interviewed maybe 2 weeks ago, and they talked about to get investors, it really started with the deal. They'd find the deal first, and then they'd be able to go to people and say, hey, I've got this deal for you. Do you want it? And that was the way that they were able to convince them. So what's the most difficult part of your business right now when you think about like how everything's going, right? So, you get deals right now. You guys have a consistent workflow as you grow, but what's that one thing you're like, man, I wish this was different in real estate?
The one thing that we're really putting a lot of attention on right now, and that's kind of my main focus, especially this year, is really on our brand side. Because like you said, a lot of these sources of business for us are very hustle based. And what stinks is if you take a day off, your business essentially takes a day off for you, right? Yeah. And it actually, for me, even this past half a year, I'd say, my third year in the business, and I started feeling a little bit of that, like, Jesus, it's a constant, right? It's a constant workload, and it can get overwhelming. It's an intense business. Between the brokerage and the investing, they're all hustle muscle. So one of the big things I'm really focusing right now is how do we build an inbound lead machine, right? And not necessarily like something that we have to pay for, like Facebook ads or internet leads, that kind of thing, but really just like how do we become top of mind throughout? And for us, it's been two major components. It's been through YouTube, which I know you've had a lot of people recently come on that have talked about YouTube, and I've been following a lot of those guys actually. So it's been YouTube, and the other thing for us has been our Facebook groups. So we're starting to build out an investor-focused Facebook group, and we have a larger community Facebook group. that's got now about 2,000 members. That we're, again, it's just a branding game, getting our name out there, having people be fans of us so that we don't have to chase business every single day.
Yeah. So that Facebook group is just, is it just your brand? Is it how to buy houses in Boston? Is it, what's the theme around your Facebook group?
Yeah. So it's actually, it's a community based group, right? So that it's nothing like how to buy a home or something like that. I mean, it's for me, my Facebook group is called Boston North Living. And I'd say probably 90 to 95% of my content is non-real estate on there. It's just a lot of community updates, activities. I do tons of videos where if I'll go get a coffee, I'll do a quick 30 second spotlight on the coffee shop. What we started doing recently, I'm really excited for, is I'm creating programming on the group. So, I invited yoga teachers, fitness professionals to live stream classes on there. And again, the whole point of it is just attract so much attention for that platform. Because the way I view it is, I think it's even beyond real estate, right? For me, I think if we can grow this out and really create a brand, it won't only generate real estate leads for us, but it'll just generate fans. And that, I think, will lead to opportunities like opening ancillary businesses up, right? Because if someone likes you, you can sell them a house, but you can also sell them insurance, a loan, contracting services. I mean, you name it, right?
Those organic leads too are pretty great. You get to create some content that becomes evergreen. So there's a video that you make now that 2 years from now gets you a deal, or 5 years from now, and if I was going to just jump on your bandwagon for a second and try to provide extra kind of value with that, if listeners, if you go back and listen to some of our podcasts over the last 6 months or a year, we've had several people come on and talk about Instagram, several people come on about how to build, their Facebook and their social media, 2 different interviews lately of people, how to go build YouTube. And one thing about how to succeed when it comes to building your brand that Lior talked about earlier on how to get those deals is that consistency, right? So the other side of that too is if it takes you 6 months to get that agent to be able to, or to get that seller to say, hey, so you can come list my house or you can list my property. It's the same thing with social media. If you're going to show up every day or every week, if you're going to do YouTube and you're going to do videos, you got to do it every week or whatever your timeline is, but be consistent. That same day, every week for 6 months before you start seeing the progress. Social media, it's the same thing. My wife's social media for 5-hour school week, it was, she posts something every day and puts it on there. And all of a sudden she just started blowing up. It went from a little bit to thousands of new people coming on and commenting all the time, but it takes that consistency. And I think the other thing you're doing with that local community Facebook group is something that any of you agents out there can do. As long as you're willing to be consistent and do it. You get to start a page for that neighborhood, for that network. If it's your niche, if it's a certain gated community that you like. I mean, we've just moved into a couple different neighborhoods, but each of my neighborhoods has its own Facebook community, right? Where homeowners in that neighborhood are part of that one. And there's some bigger things too. So finding a Facebook group that you're not just talking about real estate, but it's providing value. Lior talked about providing value and then also showing up and being consistent. But yeah, we have a ton of stuff, inside, some previous podcasts from people just trying to grow and be consistent, because real estate really is that well-rounded thing, right? You have to spend so much time trying to get new deals. And so when you're doing that, you have less time to work on the branding. But when you're calling expireds, it's that's only going to get you one thing. If you get to work on your evergreen long-term stuff, that's going to get you more deals over time, but doesn't pay the bills for 6 months. How are you going to balance that time right now? So when you start your day, are you like, hey, I'm doing 2 hours a day on my branding and then I'm going to go to 2 hours on this? Or what's your balance?
Yeah, I mean, everything you just said, I couldn't agree with more, because I noticed it in my own business, right? I mean, we started putting a number of deals together from YouTube. And, when I first opened the channel, I didn't really get that much. But once I committed to doing 2 to 3 videos a week, now for almost 5-6 months, this past weekend, I got 3 inquiries off of YouTube, which is crazy. I mean, I love it, right? I even took.
How long have you been doing YouTube?
It's probably been about 6 months now.
Okay.
And 4 months where I really have been going steadily at it. Putting out 2 to 3 videos a week. So now we're really getting. So 4
months, 2 to 3 videos a week, and that you're recording, and then now this week you got 3 people that are turning into a prospect that may or may not become a client.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this: it's incredible the people that will reach out to you. I had someone reach out to me from Saudi Arabia who was looking to buy an investment property. I had someone reach out from Mexico City looking to buy. So I've had people, not only Boston, not only people moving to Boston for like half an hour away, but literally people from all over the world are reaching out, which is crazy.
It is a fascinating world that we're living in right now.
Yeah,
it is. And my kids they don't even watch TV shows anymore. They watch everything through YouTube. And my daughter's talking to one of her friends and she's like, hey, did you see this on Jimmy Fallon and this on this? And I had no idea they even watched those shows, but they're like, no, we watch the clips on YouTube because every show now has 10-minute best of, right? Yep. Or the most popular or the viral stuff. And it's the way that people consume now is so different that like running a TV ad. I think that's got to be the most pointless thing now. Like TV commercials are probably so obsolete compared to the life that we live now.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing with the Facebook group too. I mean, the Facebook group, I think I've probably struggled with more. I mean, I've been going with that for a year now. It took a really long time for me to really figure out how to run it and what kind of content people really like to interact with. But now we're finally starting to see leads come through as well. I actually got a really hot buyer lead that I was working with from this weekend. And I'm only at 2,000. I know a couple of brokers across the country that have groups of like 10, 20, 30,000 members, and they're absolutely crushing it. So that's definitely where I'm trying to kind of take that as well. And then in terms of your original question where you asked, like, how do you balance it? I think that's huge. You have to, it's kind of like with expireds, right? You have to allocate time for it every single day. So for me, I'll probably spend at least an hour or two between all the different social platforms, everything we've got going on, 2 to 3 times a week. I'll budget in an extra hour or two for video editing. Hopefully one day I can outsource that, but I'm not quite there yet. It's really just comes down to allocation. I've got a couple of hours for social. I still put at least 1 or 2 hours of follow-ups every single day where I hop on the phone. And then the rest of the time is either spent on investment, showing clients, showing listings, whatever it is.
Yeah, Lior, you have an awesome story, man. Like moving to the U.S. when you were 10, 16 years ago, you went to college. You were, your parents wanted you to be a doctor, and then you decided along the way that real estate was your thing. And you have just been off to the races since you got started. And it's very impressive to see how many deals you've done. That you've built up so much of your real estate portfolio, and that you guys are getting to change different things. Any last pieces of advice that we haven't talked about that you think our listeners just need to know?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say 2 things. I know we harp to this all show long, but I get DMs all the time and questions about this, and it's what we talked about. It's what can you commit to do consistently, right? There is no one strategy that's going to blow it up to you. I've tried a lot of stuff. I spent a lot of money on a lot of leads, and at the end of the day, it's really just choosing that 1 or 2 or maybe top 3 channels that you will commit to, that you can learn all about, that you can go all in on. And everything else, I would just ignore. I mean, it's not going to help you in your business. It's just going to be a distraction, another shiny object. So definitely choose that. And then my other piece of advice, since I just went through this, is for that person that's kind of in year 2, 3, 4, right? That's kind of really grinding the deals out. I mean, it's all like, it's kind of like all that hustle muscle. I do think it is a little bit of a dangerous game to play. I mean, like I said, I kind of went through a little phase where it was just, it kind of took over you, right? It's a business that it's great, but it can certainly take over your life very quickly. So just figure out a way not only to generate inbound leads somehow, and usually people do that through branding, but also take some time for yourself. I mean, it sounds like a very simple lesson, but trust me, it can save you a lot of pain.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. So if people want to reach out to you, Lior, what is the best way for them to reach out to you to give you some referrals in Boston or get some advice on how to attack their brand?
Yeah, I'm all over social. So if you guys look me up, I'm Lior Rozhansky on Instagram, Lior Rozhansky RE. I'm Lior Rozhansky on YouTube. You can go to my personal website, liorrozhansky.com, where I kind of have links to my brokerage side, my investment side. We have a new kind of like multifamily education outreach there too. So that's kind of my main little hub. Or you can go to taylorandlior.com. That's also our brokerage website as well.
Yeah, Lior is spelled Lior. And no matter where you guys are getting this from, if you're on our website or on YouTube, you'll see the link to his name below. It is a tough one. It's like a Muchastegi. So I won't be able to, even if I'm looking at it, I might spell it wrong. But you guys can see it there in the show notes. We'll have some of those links and stuff for you. You'll be able to get his item in our investor toolbox, so you guys can go learn more as well. And I'm sure I'll tag him on my social media, as this one comes out. So come find us both on social media, talk to us. And Lior, thanks for joining me today. I think that our rock stars are going to be excited about this one.
Hey, appreciate you having me on here.
All right, bye now.
Rockstar Nation, thank you for listening to Real Estate Rockstars. Listen, I need a favor. If you find this free content helpful, if you find our downloadable items from each guest helpful, please, I need you to pull out your pointing finger. Yes, the one finger that points at people, and hit subscribe. Yes, subscribe. The more subscribers we get, the better we look in the ratings, and the easier it is to get guests like Robert Kiyosaki, Barbara Corcoran, all the players that are on $1 million listing in the different cities. All that stuff makes it easier the more subscribers we get. So please subscribe. And listen, there's a lot of places you can leave comments. There's a lot of places you can like. We're on Facebook. We have an Instagram page. Instagram page is I am Pat Hyben. The Facebook is Real Estate Rockstars Radio. Feel free to leave us comments there. The most popular form of commenting seems to happen on YouTube. Yes, for whatever reason, it's a very open environment. So just go to YouTube and go to Real Estate Rockstars Radio. Leave us comments there. Some of them we will read on the show. We love your feedback. So thanks, guys, and I hope you are having a great day. Oh, and also, listen, if you're going to subscribe and you haven't already left a review on iTunes, please do that too. Have a great day, and thanks so much, Rockstar Nation. I really appreciate you.